So you're wrong, and this is actually an incredibly dangerous comment. Let me explain why. First of all, I'm not keeping my ex from his kids. He's keeping himself from his kids. 1.3 million women are the victims of assault from a domestic partner each year. Of those women, 47,000 will be killed. On average, a victim will endure 7 instances of battery before leaving their abuser. Does it take the victim so long to leave? Because of comments like this. Because they know that they're going to get blamed or punished for the situation that they've been put in. One of the leading factors to why I stayed with my abuser was the financial abuse and how my ex ensured that I would be financially reliant on him. So I stayed. And the situation got worse until the police and the courts intervened, and they did impose a criminal protective order against my wishes, because at that point I was still trying to protect my ex. They imposed a criminal protective order barring him from being around or speaking to his children. But of course, he spent years calling and harassing me and telling me I wasn't doing enough to get the criminal protective order removed. I found out years later that the DA told me there was absolutely nothing I could have said or done that would have gotten her to petition the courts to have the CPO removed. Anyway, the situation went from bad to worse, even with the CPO in place. It resulted in threats being made, more police reports being filed. I was eventually told by Child Welfare Services that if I ever allowed him around my kids, that they would take the kids away from me due to neglect on my behalf, because they've already determined that the children are not safe in his presence. So to sit there and state that a victim of domestic violence is keeping their children, who are also victims of domestic violence, away from the abuser is just completely asinine. And argue that all somebody would have to do to ensure that they weren't going to have to be financially responsible for the kids that they participated in creating, all they would have to do is commit domestic violence against the children or the children's mother, to the point that somebody else intervened and a protective order was put in place that would ensure that they would have no contact with the kids. Therefore, they would get out of having to financially support the children in any way, shape, or form. Like, that doesn't even make sense. In a good chunk of the situations, child support's the saving grace that finally gets a mom to leave her abusive partner, knowing at least the children will be 50% provided for financially. So she only has to cover the remaining 50%. But to sit there and say that a mom should have to expose her children to an abuser just to get half of their financial needs met is so incredibly dangerous.